Welcome to Lunch and Learn with Industry. Today's talk is Your Career is Not What You're Expecting by Arika Arnzen from Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not the presenter today, but before we start, I want to share again just a quick summary about this Lunch and Learn series and what we're doing. So my name is Dr. Greg Zweigle, and I work at Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories in Pullman, and I'm a member of the EECS WSU Executive Council. And this council consists of engineers and managers and executives at high-tech companies. And our purpose is to advocate for the WSU program and for you all at our companies and also within the industry. And so we give advice to WSU as well. So as I mentioned last time, if you were here 2 weeks ago, when we on the Exec Council learned of this move to online for the fall, and hopefully it's just the fall, we realized this could be an opportunity to find another way for you all to connect with industry. I suspect being online is challenging, and we really hope this series is something positive for everyone. So we have experts from industry lined up to share career experiences, advice on succeeding in industry, what to expect with your first job, interviewing advice, technology discussions, et cetera. So, I mean, maybe you'll hear of a job opportunity through this series. That would be great. And it's definitely a good way to network. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. This is Arika Arnzen. And Arika worked as an intern for 3 years prior to graduating from Washington State in 2019 with a Bachelor of Science in Software Engineering. And so she has been working full-time for a year. So this is a great chance to hear about, the first year on the job. And she's been working a year and a half as an associate software engineer in the factory application development team. And they create web applications for manufacturing, which this sounds really interesting to me. So I'm kind of looking forward to hearing about this. Currently, Arika is pursuing a master's in human computer interaction through Iowa State University. In her time outside work, she enjoys all things outdoors, hiking, biking, swimming, running. She's an avid reader, and she recently backpacked through the West Highland Way in Scotland, which sounds kind of interesting. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what Arika has to share today. So the way this Lunch and Learn works is because we're a large audience, you all start out muted, and we want to have a good Q&A time. So after Arika is finished speaking, you'll be unmuted. You can ask questions. You can also ask questions anytime or make comments in the chat. That's totally fine. The meeting is being recorded. So if you want to watch later, or if you have a friend that missed this and you want to share with them, we'll make that available. So commercial for the next Lunch and Learn, that will be Friday, October 23rd with another really good speaker. So you'll notice these are every 2 weeks, and we'd love for you to come back and join us. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Arika. And go Cougs.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. My name is Arika. Thanks everyone for coming and listening to this presentation. The title is Your Career is Not What You're Expecting. And really what I hope to share with you guys today is what my job has looked like the past year, and then what the transition was like for me going from college to working full-time. So a little bit about me. I like to do things outdoors. I like to hike. I'm from Idaho, so now living in Pullman. I've always been kind of close to home base, and I really like the area. So working at Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories has been perfect for me because it's in Pullman. Today, an outline for what I want to talk to you guys about is what it looks like for me to get a new job, transitioning from my internships, the challenges that have come along with that, how college did and didn't prepare me in certain ways, how I've grown into my career more, and just what a day in work looks like for me. So first, Greg talked about that I interned at SEL for 3 years. I started doing interviews for my internship right after my freshman year. So I had taken only a few computer science classes, and I was very underqualified for the internship I got. And for what it's worth, my interview, I got every question wrong in the face-to-face interview, But at the end, I just told them, you know what, I can learn. and that was enough for them. And so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door. Nothing special really, just promising that I'd be able to learn the skills that they would need from me. So I started off my first job working on SharePoint, which is a Microsoft application that the presenter last week talked a little bit about, actually. And I also was researching obscure CSS and JavaScript bugs and HTML bugs that hadn't been figured out by some of our other developers. This work wasn't super riveting for me, so I was able to talk to my supervisor about looking for a different position. And so after about 6 months, I transitioned to a new team in a different internship at SEL, where I got to start working on building a web application using technologies like React.js, Go, Postgres. And the main project that I got to work on that was actually really cool was building a React component library. And then after that, I was in that position for about 2 years. And then that's when I accepted my full-time position with the factory application development team at SEL. And as Greg said, I work on building applications in manufacturing. So what that looks like is, not sure if any of you have been on tour up here at SEL. We have really great tours of the manufacturing facility, so I recommend that if you guys are able to coordinate that. But as assemblers are building the products that we end up shipping out to customers, they need to follow certain work instructions. They need to track defects. They need to know processes and do certain kinds of processes. So the applications we build help walk them through the whole start to finish for building products and then shipping them out the door. So when I was first presented with this job, I met with my supervisor in a room, and so the team that I was going into was a pretty big team. There was around 15 other developers that I was joining, and because of the nature of our work, there's so many, everyone on the team is almost building something different, and then all of our applications get to work together. So my supervisor presented me with a list of projects, and he's like, what do you want to work on? Pick anything, really. So of course I picked the one that looked the coolest. And what that was, the job description was that I would be building a brand new web application from scratch that would replace an existing one. And this application would be used to track defects and to provide reports and trends on quality internally for the manufacturing sites. And what this also entailed was working with a remote team in Mexico. So that's kind of what these pictures are. Our other manufacturing site is based in San Luis Potosí in Mexico. And so I have gotten to travel down there to work with the developers who are working on the project with me. And another requirement for this job was that I would be getting to lead a significant portion of it. So kind of what that looked like for me was, again, coming out of college into a leadership position. And that meant for the first time, I would be figuring out time estimates for how long are certain features going to take to develop. I was going to be creating a roadmap. So where's this project at now? Where do we want it to go? What are the requirements? Who are the stakeholders? Okay, now we have deadlines. How are we going to deliver on these deadlines? And then actually, once we started building the application, you know, if there's failures, how do I answer for failures? How do I talk to stakeholders who are disappointed? This also meant learning a lot of new technologies and a lot of new processes. So overall, this was very much a wake-up call for me because there were some classes at WSU that I took that went into some of these topics, but not to the extent that I was prepared to actually deliver on. So what else this job looked like was the teamwork aspect was a little bit different than what I had experienced in college. So it meant that I would be traveling a lot, which that was something that was really exciting for me because I really enjoy traveling and going to new places. It also meant building trust with other developers because we actually need to do this work together. We need to figure out how are we going to work together. In college, you work on something maybe for a semester or a year, but when the semester year ends, you're done working with those people. And so that was a little bit of a wake-up call. Like, that going into a job that you don't really switch off with people, but you really have to figure out how to build a cohesive team and make it work. Another piece that came along with this was I was in a position, and am in a position where I have to lead others who are more experienced than me. So trying to navigate, how do you help someone and guide someone when they have more experience than you, and when you're supposed to be the one that's making a lot of the calls for the roadmap and all those kinds of things. So a lot of different pieces. That kind of comes to my slide where I talk about the challenges with this job and what my first year looked like. So I mentioned at the beginning that the team that I got to join was a large team, probably about 15 of us that work on all these applications together. And then the actual team that I was leading was just 2 developers in Mexico. So separate groups, but the large group I joined, everyone was very experienced and veteran programmers. They knew all the processes, they knew all the technologies, and I was coming in a position of knowing nothing. And that was very intimidating for me. And leading a team for the first time was something that was intimidating because we have different opportunities for that in college, but again, it is different. And if one of my coworkers who's working on a feature and we deliver that feature out and our software breaks and causes work stoppages for people in our manufacturing site, I have to be the one to answer for that. And I can't say things like, he did it. We're going to have to go talk to him and make him fix it. So just learning a lot of those people skills and those teamwork skills has been very challenging for me. And other challenges that I'm sure a lot of you guys are experiencing right now and you can relate to is communicating with a team remotely. So the developers I work with, I only get to see them, well, now travel's shut down for a while with the virus, but before I only got to see them maybe a few times a year. So we really don't know each other very well, and communication can be difficult when you don't know someone super well. And so trying to figure out how can we talk together and work together and be on the same page and communicate clearly has been challenging. And the final bullet point you'll see, I realized, as maybe some of you guys realized, that walking into this job, I was significantly underqualified because all the things that were expected of me and demanded of me, I just didn't have those tools yet to be able to function in this job like I really wanted to and like I really envisioned for. So that leads me to my next point of how I felt like college did and didn't prepare me. So I really, really love the education that I got at WSU, and I'm really grateful for the classes. We have some really great professors, as I'm sure you guys know. And the main takeaways that have helped me be really successful are work ethic, learning how to complete projects and assignments on time and manage productivity. And I'm sure you guys are getting a bunch of that experience even online. That's got to be like a whole nother level of managing yourself. We also learn how to work with various classmates and work with people, maybe people that are really great team members or team members that aren't that great, and just learning how to coordinate with them. Another thing that I felt like college really helped with was you learn some obscure technologies that you maybe will never use again, but it's a really good skill to know how to read through documentation that's not very clear and just be able to teach yourself, because one thing I realized was there's so much that we have to teach ourselves as soon as we step into our jobs. So the main takeaway for me from college was I know how to learn and I know how to problem solve. And some of the skills that I wish I would have spent more time cultivating in college were communication skills and people skills, because that was for me the biggest gap walking into this job, being able to navigate those kinds of challenges. So for me, when I started, it really kind of felt like this. I don't know how many of you guys have just stood in the middle of the ocean on a boat with like your toes looking over the water, and the water is dark and it's kind of freaky, not that welcoming. And you realize very quickly, I need to know how to swim. How do I learn how to swim? And so this was what it was like for me, because I had all these questions kind of going in my head about the different things that were expected of me of this job. And you know, it's easy to believe lies, and it's easy to like ask questions. Should I be here? Am I really qualified for this? Do I have what it takes? How do I do my job and do it well when I feel like I'm not capable? And so I would just ask you guys, how do you learn how to swim? You know, the first thing you do is you show up at the pool, you find someone who's going to teach you. You're confident with why you're there and what you need to know. So you equip yourself, you know, you got your swimsuit, you've got your goggles, and you soak it all in and you enjoy the process, because it is going to be a process whenever you're learning something. So the first step for me was just showing up. A fun thing about my job is that I've gotten to take the private jet. It's been really fun to travel, but honestly, at times it can be very exhausting, and that can be very intimidating. But the important thing for me was just showing up. And for all of these challenges I've kind of brought up so far, you just have to come to work and be present and be ready to learn and receive everything. So learning the next thing, there's resources all around me that have been so helpful, and that's included my coworkers, various mentors. A lot of my mentors have been authors. SEL has been very generous in sending me to conferences to help me learn more. There's two pictures here of when I got to attend the Big Design Conference in Texas last year. SEL is also generously funding a master's degree where I'm getting to learn more and more to help me with my current work. And it'll look different for different companies, but at our company, we have a lot of internal training for growing leaders and developing leadership skills. And those have been so critical in helping me fill a lot of the gaps that I've had. So also developing personal and professional goals. I would encourage you guys to ask yourselves as you are finishing up with your education or figuring out what's next for you, what are your goals? And what are some of the things that are most important to you? What is the vision that you have for your career? I knew that it was important for me to have positive relationship with my coworkers. It's important for me to be able to serve others and be proud of the work that I do. And those are my personal goals. And then for my professional goals, when I started this job, I didn't really know, well, I'll step back. My professional goal was like be the best programmer in the company, and like be the greatest engineer ever, which is funny, right? But I think a lot of us have, you know, we want to do really well at our jobs. But other than those goals, I didn't have a lot of professional goals because I didn't really know where I wanted to go in my career. And actually only in the last few months have I kind of started to get more of a feel for what do I actually like to do and where do I want to steer my work. So I'm starting to learn things like I really like teaching and I really like sharing knowledge. Here you see a picture of me and some of the other women engineers at SEL. We participate in community outreach programs where we'll go to elementary and high schools and teach people about engineering. And so that was something that's really important to me too, is working at a place that has a lot of community values. Other things that I've started to realize that I want to grow in is in user experience, and I know that I always want to keep learning. And something that you guys might try, I know everyone's kind of different, but something that was really helpful for me in developing my professional goals was I made a vision statement for myself, which sounds kind of silly at first, but I just wrote down a few sentences of where I'm at now and where I want to go and how I think I'm going to get there. And that's been really helpful for me when I've come in, day in and day out, because some days at work kind of look mundane. Maybe I'm just writing code, maybe not a whole lot's going on. And those vision statements have been really helpful for me in knowing why I'm here and why I'm coming and what really is important for me. So the final step is learning how to equip yourself. And I think that for me, what that's looked like is understanding the challenges and the circumstances that I'm in, all the positives and the negatives. And then also understanding that my career is a process. And although I know where I want to be, it's going to take a while to get there, and learning how to have peace in that process has been really helpful for me. Another thing that's very critical, I think, for everyone here is finding a company that you actually want to work at, and a company that matches your values and your vision, and a place where that's going to support you and help you reach the kind of goals that you want to reach. SEL is a really great company for me that values creativity and dignity of work and community and so many other values that has made every day showing up to work really fun for me and definitely worth it. So here's a quote that I want to share with you guys. Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. I have to admit, so I gave you guys the example of being at the water and like you have to learn how to swim. I will admit that I never completed swim lessons. I actually dropped out at the last level because I didn't want to go to the deep end. But since then, I've changed some, and I am not going to be quitting anytime soon. This last year, my career has been really exciting and a really fun adventure. The main themes for me have been finding growth opportunities in every challenge, because there's going to be challenges and there's going to be circumstances that you guys will see aren't what you're expecting them to be, and maybe not even what you want, but learning how to respond in a way that's going to build you up is really important, right? Because we have decisions for all of these circumstances, and a lot of the times it is kind of in our hands whether we're going to sink or swim. And so with that, I'll just tell you guys a little bit about maybe what a day looks like for me. I get to do a lot of different things during the day. That's also been a really great fit for me because I don't always like just doing one thing day in and day out for a week. I get to maybe start off the day with project planning and writing code for a new feature. Meetings throughout the day, discussing how am I going to restructure a database to optimize reports. Maybe we have a user experience design discussion on, okay, we want users in manufacturing to use this kind of device instead, because that's going to help them track defects faster. So going through user studies and things like that. And every day we have daily stand-ups. That's been really helpful for me and my team who are remote. Just logging on to a chat, seeing each other face to face and talking about what we're working on today, and maybe doing some pair programming. And then maybe finishing up the day with writing code and working on more features. Now, there's some days where I get to talk to people all day. There's some days where I don't see anyone all day, especially more now with not a lot of people coming into the office, but I get to do a lot of varied work, and that's been really fun for me. So with that, thank you guys all for your time. And I do wish the best of luck to you as you finish your education and start to navigate your careers. And if anyone has questions, I can answer those for you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being part of this lunch and
Oh,
learn.
I
And
think there is
oh,
one question, Greg. I
oh,
just
wait,
saw,
okay, go.
sorry.
Yes,
Um,
please.
so the question is, how did you deal with being younger but in charge? That has been a very significant challenge actually for me, and it is still one that I'm navigating. There are some times where it's easier than others, and I think that right away in the project, some of the things that are difficult are, if you're taking direction from someone who's younger than you and they know less than you, it can be really hard to trust them. And so when I started with this position, I knew that I need to build trust with my team and I need them to understand that I'm for them and I want to work with them and kind of to pull them into a partnership with me, right? Because it's like I need their expertise to help all of us succeed. And so it's just really important for me getting to actually travel down to Mexico and spend a week with these people that I'd be working with and go out to lunch and be in their lives, and just be genuine with each other so that we could trust each other. But it is still a struggle now, even at times. I hope that answers your question. Okay, another question. While we have you, do you regret any classes you took at WSU? Looking back, do you see any class as a waste on your professional life? There are definitely classes that I took where I will never use those skills again. And I think that has at times been frustrating for me, but I think it is also what you make it. There was a class I took machine learning, and for me, it was a very hard class. And I probably won't ever use those skills. But what I did get from it was an appreciation for machine learning and the knowledge that I don't want to go into that career field. So I think for any class, I never really saw any as wastes, but just as, okay, I'm going to take that and know that I'm not interested into that and I'm not going to steer my career in that direction. So I hope that answers your question. Can you share a failure or challenge you had and how you got through it? Yes, let me think. Well, there was one time right in the beginning when I had deployed some code to one of our manufacturing sites and it took down the site. So just what that means is we went offline for a little bit. And that can be very critical because when manufacturing isn't able to work, that stops the production of the company. And that was a very not a good thing at all. And my boss was not pleased with me. And really kind of the way I didn't get around it, but the way I got through it was meeting with other team members and talking with them and figuring out what went wrong and why, and how do I not let this happen again. And I think and there's been a lot of other failures and challenges, to be quite honest. And I think that the way that I just learned how to get through them is accept them. The first meeting I had with my boss, he told me, not if you fail, but when you fail. And then he went on to say whatever it is what he was going to say, but just also giving me that expectation that he knows that when you're writing code, there will be failures. It is very, very challenging to write perfect code, although that's why we work really hard on testing, right? And someone else said they want to hear about the time that the code deployment took down one of the factories. It was really not fun. It was not a fun conversation. I will say one other thing about that though. We had a meeting. So whenever we have big failures, we pull like all 15 of us in a room and my boss will say, what happened? Why did it happen? How do we make sure that doesn't happen again? And we kind of troubleshoot together. Well, I think this was like 2 or 3 weeks in to me starting the job, which, and so everyone knew very much that I was the cause of this problem. without even having to say it out loud, and my boss knew that too. But it was really cool because one of my coworkers stood up and he said, this is the code that caused the problem, and all of us could have done better at testing prior to the release because we all knew that this code was being released. So I thought that was really cool, and it really showed me that the people that I work with, no one here is trying to point fingers and blame, but we really are in a team, and we want to work together to help everyone be successful. Okay, another question is, when you talked about people skills, do you have any examples of challenges you faced dealing with people? I definitely have a lot of examples. Let me think of one that I am willing to share. Yeah, okay, I have one. There have been in different groups, and because I've worked with a lot of different people at SEL, because I've been in just through my internship and my job now, I've just worked with a lot of different people. And there have been times when I've presented designs, so a lot of the work I do is user interface. So maybe that's like mocking up a design and then programming it, and we have to do demos often, even weekly. Sometimes we'll do demos. And in all honesty, I've had people laugh in my face and tell me that my designs were horrible and why would I do that? And so that's pretty challenging to hear, right? Especially if you don't have a lot of equity and relationship with someone. And so it was kind of challenging for me to figure out how to work through that because, again, I was new on the team and I wasn't sure, did this person mean it? Did they not mean it? Is the design bad? Are they just mean? And at first I didn't know really what to do with this problem because it hurt my feelings, but I wasn't sure if that merited a conversation. Actually, how I ended up handling it was I just was completely honest with my supervisor and just let him know, hey, here's what happened. This is how it made me feel. I don't know if he meant it that way, but can you help me work through this? And my supervisor has been really helpful in helping me navigate things like that. Are there any classes you wish you took more during your undergrad degree? I do wish I would have taken more communication classes. There's not a lot of communication classes required, or at least there wasn't when I got my degree. I think that would have been really helpful. As far as other like technical classes, I really liked the databases class. I really liked, I think a lot of the required ones, I just really respect the teachers and the education that they give to us. There aren't a lot of web application classes, and a lot of the development I see is kind of going more in that direction. But the web technology moves so fast, so I understand why it's difficult to create classes around that, but that is something that I wish WSU would have provided more of. Okay, and another question. You talked about still learning on business trips. Do you get feedback from workers who receive your guided products and things you could change? Okay, let me think about this one a little bit. Do I get feedback from workers in the factories? Yeah, actually, that's something I should have mentioned. A cool thing about building internal products is that I get to work with users all the time. There's different groups in SEL that don't get to do that because they might write software that goes out to a customer. We sell that product and it goes out to a customer. But I get to walk to the building next to the building I'm in, and there's hundreds of people in there that are pulling up my application and actually using it to do their daily work. And so that's provided a really cool opportunity because I always get feedback, and it's also given the opportunity to really build relationship with people in manufacturing sites all over the US. So I was in Purdue last week working with users face-to-face on the application and things that they would like to see. Yeah, someone mentioned EECS doesn't require comm courses, they require technical writing. That is something that I wish was different personally. And then another question, what are your thoughts on career fairs? Any advice for making them less awkward? That's funny. Career fairs. I personally like career fairs. I've found networking to be really important. A lot of the people I first coordinated with at SEL, I met through career fairs. There's people in different companies that I have a relationship with that I met at career fairs. So I definitely think they're important. And I also think that it's a good opportunity to do like your quick elevator pitch of why someone should hire you. Like I think that this is really good practice for things like that. And advice for making them less awkward. I practice little interview question things like that in the mirror, and that's helpful for me. And I think the more that you do things like that, it will be less awkward because you'll feel natural. And if you feel natural and you feel authentic, then any awkwardness that happens outside of you almost just doesn't really affect you. Or at least that's how it is for me. Okay, I think that that's it for questions, unless anyone had anything else. Okay. One more comment. You showed a picture of women, SEL engineers. Any suggestion for women going onto teams without many women? Yes, honestly, that would probably be a whole nother presentation for me to give. Just because it is interesting, right? There's not a lot of women in the field. And when I first joined the team, I was the only girl for a very long time. And that was something that was intimidating for me in the beginning, but I think that once you start getting to know people, everyone on my team was so nice and welcoming, and so it really wasn't a problem. I think that any suggestion I could give would be find other women in your company or in your problem area to connect with. There's a group at SEL, the Women in Engineering group that we have named ourselves. And so we'll meet once a month and different women will give presentations. And that's been a really cool resource for me, is being able to talk to other people who have similar experiences.
All right. Oh, maybe I should give a couple more seconds since I almost short-circuited all these awesome questions earlier. But I think, thanks everybody for those questions. Those are really good questions, really interesting and good answers, Arika. Let me close with one thing. So we're doing this lunch and learn every 2 weeks. And if you enjoyed this, please come back. Even if it's not someone necessarily in your field, we're trying to make these advice that applies to anyone, whether you're in RF design or computer science or power engineering. So our next one is in 2 weeks, and we really look forward to having you come back, tell your friends about it. Thanks, Arika. That was great.
Thank you all again.
Yeah, very, very nicely done. Thank you so much for answering all my questions.
To learn more about the Lunch and Learn with Industry webinar series, follow the link in the description, and we'll see you next time on Lunch and Learn with Industry.